Hello, Accounting 1 students, and welcome to our lesson 2-1, where we are going to talk about those T accounts that I kind of alluded to during chapter 1. So we're going to talk about the relationship between our accounting equation and our T account. Then we're going to talk about what the debit and credit sides are, the increase and decrease sides, and then also the balance sides of our various accounts. And then we're going to talk about the two rules that are associated with the increase side of an account. So let's get started here. So in chapter 1, we talked about how transactions affect our accounting equation. We alluded to that a little bit, but in reality, the way that I showed you in chapter 1 to keep track of transactions is just not feasible, because if you think about Target and the amount of transactions that they go through in a day, um, a month, or even a year, it's just not feasible to keep track of things like that. So instead, what we need to do is keep a separate record for each account. And so that's where we come into play with something called a T account. So if you think about our accounting equation as a T, and what I'm talking about here is this T account. If you look at this line here, this looks like a big T. Okay, and we talked about that our accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus our owner's equity. As I stated in chapter 1, our assets are on the left side of our equation, and our liabilities and owner's equity are on the right side of our equation. And in order for us to be happy as a business, our left and our right sides always have to equal, hence why the equal sign is right down the middle. So what that brings us to is talking about something called an account. And an account is simply a record that summarizes all the information that affects a single item. So if we were to take cash, for example, cash is an example of an account. Okay, anytime that we deal with cash, it goes in the cash account. And so we have to remember that transactions change the balances of our accounts and also our accounting equation. And that in order for us to do that correctly, we have to analyze and determine how those account balances are changed. And so one of the ways that we can do that is a very introductory way in accounting is to use our T account, which is simply an accounting device that we use to analyze our transactions. So what that means is that we have two very special names for the amounts that get recorded on either the left or the right sides of the account. Those two names are debit and credit. Now, some of you may have heard of the word debit before in terms of like a checking account, and you may have heard the word credit before. Again, possibly talking about a checking account, or also maybe you've just heard the word credit, like a credit card. All of those names that and definitions that you've come to think of mean nothing in accounting. All I can tell you is debit means left and credit means right. So if you can imagine me, I am at home marching around saying debit, left, credit, right. Debit, left, credit, right. That's all you need to remember, is that debit is on the left side, credit is on the right side. That is all that means in accounting. You may see abbreviations like this DR, that does not stand for doctor, that stands for debit in accounting, as well as the CR, that stands for credit in accounting. Again, debit meaning left, credit meaning right. So again, march it out. Debit, left, credit, right. Debit, left, credit, right. That's all you need to remember. So I kind of just went into all this, but remember, the words that we and the definitions we've thought of before, they don't mean anything to us in accounting. Debit is left, credit is right. So if we think about it this way, our T account then has the left side is the debit side and the right side is the credit side. Okay, and how that affects different accounts, we're going to look at here in just a second. So the sides of a T account are used to show either the increases or decreases in account balances. And the increase side of each kind of account can be associated with two rules. If we think about it, I'm going to just flip back to this real quick. Our assets, remember, are on the left side. Left side is the debit side. That means assets increase with a debit. Since liabilities and owner's equity are on the right side, that means that liabilities and owner's equity increase with the credit. Does that make sense? If you think about your T account here, Since assets are on the left, they go up with a debit. Since liabilities and owner's equity are on the right, they go up with a credit. And that's essentially what this is just saying right here, is that assets increase on the left or the debit side because they are on the left side of the T account, and liabilities and owner's equity increase on the right side or the credit side because they are on the right side of our accounting equation. So this again just kind of explains what I just mentioned here, that on the left side are assets, they increase with a debit, and liabilities and owner's equity increase with a credit. Okay. Now, we have something called the normal balance. The normal balance is simply the side of an account that is increased. That's all the normal balance means. When it says, what's the normal balance of an asset? You would say a debit, because debits are on the left side, assets are on the left side. That means they increase with a debit. Okay. Um, liabilities and owner's equity, their normal balance would be a credit because they're on the right side, and that's where they increase. Now, accounts decrease on the side opposite of their increase. So since assets are on the left side, that means that they increase with a debit. If an asset goes down, that means it would decrease with a credit. Does that make sense? It's just the exact opposite of what it is. And since liabilities and owner's equity are on the right side, they increase with a credit, which means they have to decrease with a debit. You can only have those two options. You either increase with a debit or decrease with a credit, or you increase with a credit and you decrease with a debit. You can't have anything else. Those are your only two options. So here's a little cheat sheet, and I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you save this slide, whether it's a screenshot, whether you want to take a picture with your phone, whether you want to jot this down in a notebook, whatever it happens to be, but this is your cheat sheet. No, you don't get to use it on the test, but this is essentially what you need to get started in order for us to keep moving forward with accounting. You have to understand that any asset is going to increase with a debit and decrease with a credit. Any liability is going to increase with a credit, decrease with a debit, and any owner's capital account is going to increase with a credit and decrease with a debit. Now, this is just very, very basic, and I will tell you that there are going to be special accounts that have different things, and we'll talk about those. We have a whole year to get through that. But for now, what I need you to remember is this slide. I cannot stress that enough. This is just something that you're going to have to memorize, and the more you work with it, the more I promise it will make more sense, but you need to have this slide down, okay? Take a picture, pay attention. I cannot stress that enough. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over and do our 2-1 work together over in our Mind tab, and then you'll have your application problem, you're on your own, and then your terms and questions to do as well.